it better or worse?
It's better.
Okay. As some of you asked me about more information about the trip, and I mentioned to Brother Carl if he's out sometime, if he would like for me to report to the church, or if he just needed a rest. And he said, how about next week? So it's pretty quick, because he had been out to be with David over in Texas. So, but it's interesting that it's so relevant to today, because just today, or this morning, or the prisoners from Cuba, George Allen was let go. He'd been in prison for 5 years in Cuba. And we'll talk some things about that. And also, I think when Carol Greer, when she heard I was going, she said, "You can't go to Cuba." I don't know if that's because she thought that it wasn't open as a country, but the country has changed somewhat. It's more open, and as did in Russia, when it was such a closed country, the Iron Curtain, it's opened up more towards people coming in. We didn't come in under cloak and dagger. We came with a religious visa, and it was purposeful so we can help support this particular conference. So things change, and I hope that it'll become even more of an open country, more open to the gospel. I'll let you know that God is alive and well in Cuba. You'll be pleased to know that, and He is growing there, and He's doing a lot in Cuba. The first thing I would like to say is just thank you for your prayers. I know with the email network, about a week before, I sent out a note just saying, please pray for me. And a lot of things that happened, and even in that last week, that your prayers really helped me do the things I needed to do to get there. And as you can imagine, when you do something like this, Satan loves to stop these things because he hates to see these things done. He hates them. And so he throws stumbling blocks here and there, and things happen to me that slow me down, and to my partners that others are going. But God is there, and God was His providence was there, His power, and God is there. So thank you for that. And I would like to say that I put Cuban mission trip. I'd like to say, think of this is not Dale's trip. This is God using Dale and 4 other people in working through us to help some people in Cuba, our Christian brothers and sisters in Cuba. So you'll be happy to know that God was able to do a lot through us, and we were His vessels, but He did what He did. I'd like for this to be a little bit of a kind of a vicarious trip for you as we look, and I took lots of pictures, and I hope that I'll flip through some of them pretty quickly, but so where you can get a feel for what Cuba is like. Many of you have been to Haiti. It's similar landscape, and the Dominican Republic. John's been to DR before too, and but Cuba's been closed for a lot of this type thing, and so I'd like for you to feel like this is an opening that would be good for the Cubans, and good for Christianity, and good for the cause of Christ. Well, I just want to first point out to you this is on my fingers here. I took this picture. This is us in Mississippi, in Maria, East Central Mississippi. Of course, this is Havana, Cuba. This is where we were in Havana, Cuba. And so you get a feel for how far it is. And this is Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and then you get to Venezuela. And then here's a close-up of Cuba. It's about 90 kilometers wide. They give me kilometers, and it's about 1,200 kilometers long. That's what I'm told when I was there. So you get a feel for it. It's just a long island, our country there. But the country has multiple religions within it, just like Dominican Republic and Haiti. One of the main ones there is Catholicism, and that's probably about 50% of the country. Second is probably voodoo, which many of these people came from Africa, and they came there and still practicing voodoo, and some of them it's kind of a mixture of the two, Catholicism and voodoo. And I believe that's true also in the Dominican Republic and Haiti when we've been there. Stan Buckley has told me that that's a lot what it is. And that type thing can interfere with or block some people from coming to Christ. But Christ, God through His activities there, has brought many people to him, and the ones who are there are very excited about what they're doing. They're excited about telling their country about Christ and having more people to know and to know where they're going when they die. So those are the type of religion, and the Christianity is probably only about 1.5%, which is not very many of a class of a country of about 11 million people. But of those, the believers there, they're not country club Christians for the most part. They're there because they believe. I'm sure there are some people who kind of just come to church on Sunday, but most of the ones who come because they want to be there. And then the remainder of them is kind of a mixture of Jehovah's Witness and other religions, Mormons, I'm sure, but smaller amounts of each of those. But Cuba, as you know, is still a communist country, and that's probably why some of the people said when they raised their eyebrows when they said, "You're going to Cuba?" You know, like, are you going to be able to go there? And even when I was asked, I had that same thought: are we being allowed to do this? And the answer is yes. And I think the reason for that is that with Castro, as you know, he's become sick. He's not doing as much now, and I'm not sure how ill he is. But his brother Raul is now in charge, and although he's communist, I think he's got more lax in wanting to allow things more for the people, so that there'll be less people trying to leave on boats and leave on planes to get away from there, and hoping more and more to stay there. So he's been more open to other people coming in. We came under a religious visa, which was the best for us because it was open and we had to pay for that. But the purpose of that is so that we can bring in money and not be under the table, but can support this particular conference. We were at a conference, and I think you probably remember from the email that our purpose was to be there to encourage and educate or teach some of our Cuban healthcare workers, which would be physicians, nurses, and OTs and PTs, just to help them learn how they could share their faith, both sensitively and legally, in their places of work. And so that was our mission, and I believe God was able to work through us to do that. And they were very excited to have us there. As you think of going there, and as I started looking, and as it got closer, I was getting emails about things I needed to look into, and such as that. And one of them was looking at travel.gov. If you're ever going somewhere, you can always look at what a country is like. And it kind of gives you the worst case scenario, but one of the things it said was just what happened to Mr. Allen, just George Allen, the guy who just got let go, the prisoner, where you could be in the country and be under real reason and just do something, and they're watching and they think it's wrong, and they can take you to prison, and you're guilty until proven innocent, as opposed to here where you're innocent until proven guilty. And that, as you know, happened with Candace Dunlap over in where was she? Not Madagascar. Where was she? Macedonia. Wasn't she Macedonia, I believe it was? Where she was given a gift and put it in her pocket, and they found it. They said, "You're stealing a religious artifact," and she got put in jail. So that's something they mentioned. And also, there's these so-called guides that come where they can they know English fairly fluently, so they can come up to you and talk and convince you that they can take you around the country and let you see the country. And where in reality, Travel.gov warned you that what they're doing is trying to get you off alone so they can separate you from your money. And there aren't that many violent crimes done there, but there's a lot of pickpocketing and stealing. We even had some in our group that had some things stolen where they knew it was there and it was gone. There one minute, gone the next. Had one of my people there got patted on his backside, and he didn't have his wallet in his back pocket. It was in his front. But he knew he had been frisked to see if he could steal something. So that's the type of thing we're going into. We also had, which available we paid for some insurance through Cru, and this was through Campus Crusade for Christ, although they said that they would disavow any knowledge of it if one of us got caught. But they were helping out in somewhat, that's a joke, relating to Mission Impossible. But anyway, there was this thing called SOS that we signed up for, which is where if you got sick, they would direct you to the most nearby hospital that could take care of that thing, or they would come in with a plane and take you out, which I've known some people who've been in foreign countries that had to have that done. So we paid that, didn't use it, thank goodness. Well, and then I like to talk, that's kind of the background. I'd like to talk a little about the trip. This is again the picture here of the country. This is a picture of me coming in to the country. That's Cuba, as you're looking here in the fields. And this is coming into the Jose Martin Habana Airport, which is, as you can see, it's not like the Jackson International Airport. And this is kind of like it has been in places I've been before, such as like Haiti. That's it's not, looks like an old 50s or so airport that hadn't been kept up. We arrived there in the afternoon and had some time to do some sightseeing, which we weren't there for tourists, but we were allowed to do some of that, which I'll show you about later, some pictures of later. But then we quickly got into the time of the meeting, which is time when we would go over various topics that we were going to talk about. And I'd like to just go over with you some of the topics. This is what's called the Whole Person Care Conference, which is where, as a physician, we're encouraged to not just care for a cold or high blood pressure, but try to get to know them a little bit more till we know, do they have a relationship with Christ? Do they go to church regularly? Do they pray regularly? And that type of thing. And as you ask certain diagnostic questions, you can find out, you can kind of categorize them. Are they unbeliever? Are they maybe a country club Christian? Maybe only on Sunday, none of the rest of the week. Are they one who's committed Christian, or maybe an atheist or whatever? So you can kind of categorize them and you can decide how to approach them as you see them later. And it's not a once and done type thing. It's the type thing you do as a process as you work with people over time and having time to pray with them and pray for them or talk with them. And so that's kind of the conference that we were going to do. These people were really hungry for this to be done. These are, of course, the Cuban Christians. This is an unusual thing. Beth has always told me I shouldn't go on these trips unless I'm going to use my medical expertise, because there's plenty of other people who can do other things like building houses and things like that. But I know there are exceptions. But she said this time is different. You need to go and be able to share with some of the Cuban Christians. And so when I got asked to do this by my friend Bob Mason, who's in Medical Strategic Network, prayed about it, thought about it. Beth and I talked about it, and we signed up. And it's been over since July. It's been going on, all this going on since July to get to this. I'm going to just read you some of the different topics that we went over, and you can get a feel for this. One of them was the ethics of whole person care. That is it ethical for me to talk to my patient and ask them spiritual questions? And the answer is, even in America, from the JCAHO, if you're familiar with that, Joint Commission of Hospitals, they say it is, because it helps people, and you have to ask permission. You can't push it on someone, but if they want to have this, it's considered good. And you probably all feel like that people get better quicker when they're cared for from their spiritual standpoint, not just physically. And studies have even shown that too. So ethically, it is ethical to do that. How to take their spiritual history, how to share the gospel. We taught them how to the spiritual power for living, which talked about the Holy Spirit within us. Call for a purpose. In other words, me as being am I a physician who happens to be a Christian, or am I a Christian who happens to be a physician? But the latter is the correct way. I'm a Christian who happens to use my physician platform to be a vehicle to let more people know about Christ. And that's what we were trying to get that in their thinking, to have a paradigm of that, and more of a kingdom mentality, thinking of what is best for the kingdom of God here on this earth. Then we went into spiritual brokenness. We've all had problems in life. We all can identify times where we've made mistakes, and they are no different than us. But showing how God can use that brokenness. Maybe if you had an alcohol problem, or a mother who had an alcohol problem, how you can relate to others, which you couldn't have if you didn't have that experience. So our brokenness, God can use in a lot of ways. And then we went on what's called a hospital practicum, where we went out to 9 different hospitals in groups of about 8 or 9, and went in and talked to people, got to know them, and offered to share Christ with them, and offered to pray with them if they were open to accept Christ. So, so that's kind of the outline of the thing. Let me catch up on some of these pictures, and I'll just show you some of these pictures and talk about these. This is, I call it a costly selfie. I had a selfie of myself, but you can see in the background Cuba. This was in the airport. As soon as I did that, someone came up to me and said, no, said no. So I fortunately, they didn't take my camera away. I wouldn't have these pictures today. This is, I thought, a stark contrast where the Cuban government, you see on the left, you see Fidel Castro and Raul on the right, and I don't know who the people are in the background. They may be Marxist or probably communist people in the background, but this is the government, and there's a good bit of propaganda about how they're such a good country, and you know, we can see the difference. But and then the contrast between, you can't see it as well on the other, but it says English Baptism, that's the Baptist, the English Baptist church in Havana. It's probably one of the bigger churches there. It had been a circus that they had been sold, and they used it for services for there in Havana. Let me see if I can show you a couple other pictures. This is part of it. You can see from the inside. You can see it's kind of circular like a circus might be. And you can see these are kind of from the times of the 1950s. They look like, and they really haven't had the money, resource to really fix these things up. This is the sanctuary. This is a man who helped me around, and he was there. He's a physician and a cardiologist there who stayed with me most of the time. He was bilingual, and so he helped me a lot through this. And let me see. This is a picture of their, when we went on touring a little bit, this is a picture of their Capitol building. I'm told that the height of the Capitol building, you know, it looks just a lot like ours in Washington, D.C. I'm told that the height of it is just a few feet above theirs, and there's a purpose to that. They wanted to be able to say theirs is bigger than ours. That's what I'm told. And then there's a picture of that church again. And here's this Christ statue, which many of you are probably more familiar with, the more well-known one down in Rio de Janeiro, Christ the Redeemer statue, which is 125 feet high. And this is along the lines of that. But if you don't remember, in that one, Christ's arms are outstretched. And this one is closer, and the Cuban physicians there, Christians there, said that's because Christ is trying to hold the Cubans to his chest. And you could say, let me get a selfie there and show you that I was really there. This is of the harbor, and there's some fort there, which I don't understand. I don't remember all the details of it. And this is where the Christ statue is over the park there. It's behind those trees. These are the different cars that were there. We went into Old Havana, and Old Havana has been fixed up. You may have recently seen this summer, Beyonce and Jay-Z were there. Probably not. I'm not sure if they're legal because you can't go there. You can't go there as a tourist, but they got to go there. But anyway, they were on these cobblestone streets, which I'll show you. But first, they had these cars like this. This reminded me of a Mary Kay lady with a pink car. And this over the right, this is some of the original stones of when the Spanish came in to settle in probably the 1500s. And this is my friend Bob Mason, the leader of the trip, in the middle of this cobblestone street. That's in Old Havana. And this is one of their cathedrals, the Catholic cathedrals that we went in. And this is, of course, Cuba's known for cigars. And we didn't see many there. I didn't smoke any. Shay Haley said I smoked some. That's how I got my Cuban raspy voice. But I just got a Cuban cold. But I said I didn't do that. And it's my understanding that many people in Cuba can't even afford them. They're so nice that they pretty much are just sent out because they don't make much money there. And then this over to the right was in our hotel. And it was pictures of things that had been done over the years from when Cuba had the revolution, and Castro and others took over, and how that they turned around literacy, and how they gave the best health care in the world, and you name it, they've got it, and it's just, in my opinion, it's propaganda. It's what it is. So, but they made people. That's what's going on there. This is some of the food that we ate. We got meals each day. It's in a little container here for lunch and supper, and this is some kind of ground meat here in a banana, cooked banana, and then over here you see a hot dog and some kind of potato and some rice. They ate lots of rice, and if you don't like carbs, you get lots of carbs there. But it was okay, and this is the type of food that they eat. I took a picture of this just to let you know what they ate. I tried not to eat anything that was not cooked. Some of their salads looked great, but I didn't touch it because I've gotten sick on trips before. Travelers diarrhea. And this is one of the best restaurants that's known there. You see all this graffiti on it. You're invited to do this. This is in old Havana, and but outside of that, there was literally no graffiti anywhere else. And I asked someone about that, or someone pointed that out to me, and they said the reason is, if you're seen making graffiti, you can be shot on sight by police. So that cuts it down. But there was zero graffiti outside this. This is a picture of our praise and worship. I would estimate for an average between 90 and 120 people came to the conference, and they were very passionate about Jesus and passionate about their worship and their praise, and they just enjoyed that. These are the leaders, some of the praise leaders. They frequently had videos that they would show, and they would sing along with the video. And many times we would look at the CD. It was like a copy of another CD. It wasn't, maybe even downloaded from the internet, because again they did not have much resources there. These are a few people that I met there. The one on the left that I'm sitting next to is a lady who is a biologist who had some type of anemia, which she talked to me about, and I see one of my hematologists asking IVs and trying to give her some thoughts back on that. The one on the right is a pediatric surgeon, and the lady over to the far right was just one of the helpers there. She was one of the cooks for our meals. This is a Santa Biblia with the Holy Bible, and then on the right I took a picture of John 3:16. San Juan 3:16 on the bottom of the right. And then this is a picture from the front of the time here that we have in the New Testament. Anybody recognize who? Well, Gideon Bible, just a Gideon Bible. Good, isn't that right? And in Spanish. This is me. Over to my left, or as you're looking, facing on the left, the man is he was my translator. And he called himself Caesar Augustus. Augustus, I think, was the last name. But and then on the left is Barbara. She translated me for me from time to time. When I have time between the teachings, I would just get one of my translators with me and just walk up and down the aisles and ask him, "How are you doing? Where you're from?" Just try to get to know him, and I just tried to get to know more of them better. And I think it helped them feel more closer to us when we would do that. And I'd love to see someday there be, I don't know if you have on your phone Google Translator on your computer, but it's where you can talk in and it'll talk out, and say if I talk in English and it comes back out in Spanish, and then someone talks in Spanish and comes back out in English. Right now that has to be done with a Wi-Fi connection or internet connection. But I would love to see Google Translate in such that you could put it on your iPhone or iPod Touch or whatever your phone, and take it with you and communicate better or easier, and it would be nice, because language barrier is not so good. This one over to the left here, that was the Tuesday the Wednesday we met was what's called Latin American Healthcare Day, Appreciation Day. And so we had a conference upstairs in the afternoon where we celebrated that type thing. It was good. And, this was our group that went. Bob Mason here, Helen Torres, Anna DePue, and Stan Shu, and then me over to the left. And then this is with some of the Cubans. And this sign right here is a sign for God. they told me. So we all did that. And this is an interesting story. This is a lady who was presented to me as a missionary, and she and I got to talk through a translator. She was a missionary, and she was really passionate about telling people about Jesus. She was there for a while, and she was going back to her province, which was some ways away. But she started telling me her story about how she came from voodoo. And this is a picture. She showed me this picture on the right. This is her 10 years earlier, and this is her husband, and this is her children, and this is some of the voodoo things that they were believing in and studying in. And she said one day she had an illness that was told to her by her physician that it was life-threatening. She probably die of it. And her cousin, who was a believer, came to her and said, "I'm praying for you." And she prayed with her and prayed for her that she would get well. She got well, and I believe it was a miracle. I mean, I don't know the illness. And she said, "I believe." And she became a strong Christian, and she's come to these conferences, and she's telling everybody about it. She calls herself a missionary, and she was just passionate about this. So it's fun meeting with her and talking with her. And there were several others in the congregation that had illnesses and had survived them, and people had prayed, and they just believed it was of God, a healing of God. And I still believe even in America there are things that I can't explain that happen in healthcare that I just believe is God doing a miracle. So I think He still does that. This is a picture of me and the pediatric surgeon. This is a gift that she gave me and Beth. She gave Beth this thing right here. This is to her. And this is to me, the fish. And that is something she being a surgeon, she has access to IV tubing. And she made that IV tubing and little things you pop off the tops of some medications. And she, with her surgical skills, sewed it together and would give it to people. She gave me and some others that. And this is a picture of two people. The lady on the far left was a microbiologist, and is a microbiologist. The one in the middle is her husband, and he has. And by the way, if y'all need to go, please feel free to go. I'm going to try to keep moving on. He is was a physician, but also a biostatistician. But he had some kind of illness where he had first developed diabetes. It sounds like he had DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a pretty severe form of diabetes, and sometimes can be serious, sometimes even potentially life-threatening. But he had a heart attack with it. He arrested, and they hung crepe. They told him he wasn't going to make it, but they took care of him, and he made it. And you can't even tell. He had a stroke too. You can't even tell there's anything wrong with him. And they just believe that God healed him. And I couldn't tell there's anything wrong with him. He's doing well now. This is some of the literature they used on the talks, and this is from Crew from Campus Crusade for Christ, and it's basically the 4 spiritual laws. And this is us going on the trip to the hospital. It's on Thursday afternoon, and us in the hospital. This is us getting ready, and then this is over to our right is a young lady's a nurse who I just got my picture with her, and she went. She's over in this picture too. We spread out through the hospital and went to see some people. This is actually before when they got a picture of everybody in the white coats getting ready to go. And over to the right is when after we had people come back and tell stories about what God had done through this, just kind of celebration service, and all kinds of stories about how God helped things work out. One, I'll just share with one out because we don't have much time, but there was this lady cardiologist, woman cardiologist, who went with a group to one of the hospitals, and as they were going in and telling people what they were doing, some of the nurses stopped them and said, "I'm not sure you should be doing this." So some resistance and all this. "Let's let you go speak to our administrator." So they did. They're law-abiding. They would go and speak to the administrator. Probably about 8 or 9 people came into her office, and she was the spokesman. She started talking with them, and she realized that the lady had just come back from an illness. She had breast cancer, and she had some problems, and she was having some emotional problems with that and grieving. And this young lady had some medical problems also, the physician, the Christian physician who's a cardiologist. And she shared with her about her own story about how she'd gone through some medical problems, but how God had helped her through that. And that she just picked up a book earlier that day. Is it coincidence? I think not. I think it was God. She picked up a book that day about helping people through illnesses and from a Christian standpoint. and she had it with her. I don't know why she took it. She didn't know why she took it, but she did. But she gave it to her. And she said, she shared it with her and said, this could help you. And the young lady was not a believer, but she, after that, allowed them to go and talk to people and share Christ with a lot of people. And we're praying that she will someday come to Christ. And as you know, often in adults, you often have people who are, it takes maybe 12 to 16 times of interaction with Christ, or having been confronted with the a crisis where you're crisis of belief, where you either, yes, you follow Christ or don't follow Christ. And so it's a process. And so a lot of times what we're doing is we're maybe, to use the agricultural analogy, we're busting up clods and we're sowing seeds and we're sprinkling a little bit of water, but God sends the rain, God sends the sun, God makes it grow. That's not our job. Our job is to spread the seeds and to bust up the soil, get it ready, and God brings people to Him through the Holy Spirit. So they had all kinds of stories. They were pretty excited about how that God had worked things through. This is our group of cardiologists, 4 cardiologists in the group. I'm not sure Cuba's ever had 4 cardiologists together in one group like this. Maybe not. And this is over to the right. This is one of the conferences where Anna Depew was presenting about brokenness. And here's a picture of their, on the left, the picture of their, they have the 3rd largest cemetery in the world. And I don't know who has the other 2. They didn't know. Maybe some of y'all would know. And then this one over to the our right is a lady who's a missionary, and she takes in homeless kids and works with them and takes care of them from a Christian standpoint and helps them. Many of them come to Christ and helps them get back into society. She actually spends some time in Miami and some time in Cuba. Outside of Cuba, the largest population of Cubans is Miami. So, but you can probably guess that too. And then here's another with the conference with the translator. And then this is me with the young lady. We did a thing where we had a secret pal, and I wrote her an encouraging letter. She's holding the letter in her hand, and she came up and thanked me for the letter. And I wrote it in English, so she would have to get someone to translate it, but she was thankful for it. And this one over on the left is a lady who's a social worker, and she had some kind of some type of a congenital deformity in her hands, and maybe some medication her mother took during her pregnancy. But she had some hands that were very small, but she was passionate about Christ, and she helped us with getting people in. Being a social worker, she could get us to places in the hospital we couldn't necessarily get. And then this is the follow-up, which I liked about this. The next thing we talked about follow-up for people that had made a decision for Christ. And in our personal group, we had one person made a decision for Christ, but we saw about 12 people, so the other 11 did not, but they didn't mind us praying with them and praying for them. And again, so that may be nudging them one step closer to making a decision for Christ sometime. The lady who made the decision for Christ in our group said that she had just had someone come by 30 minutes earlier talking about the same thing. And when we came by, she said it must be God, so she decided